Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Wedding disaster. Ridge dumps Taylor and runs away at the last minute. Taylor isn't informed about Brooke's reunion by shady Ridge. Forrester's fiancée Taylor Hayes is the reason he puts his reunion with Brooke Logan on hold. What a mess. Ridge has spent decades flirting with these two women, and they have put up with it. They once became great friends and threw his fancy bupkis on the curb. Ridge is still playing both ends against the middle as of right now, so that didn't last long. Is there anyone in this dumpster fire of middle age worth supporting? Brooke must hold off. In case you missed it, Brooke fell off Nick Marone's ostentatious boat in Naples while performing a mermaid motion. Fortunately, Ridge saved her and her billowing garment by diving into the ocean. Ridge felt like a hurricane after nearly losing his Logan. After pulling her to the shore, he performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on her, and they shared a passionate kiss. Because the best aphrodisiac is seawater. Ridge gave Brooke CPR. The two appeared to be headed back toward their destiny, but how will Ridge respond once he returns to Los Angeles and reality? Given that Taylor might go out of remission after receiving broken heart syndrome from Ridge, he must be frantic. Is Ridge able to take charge? We believe that Ridge will be inundated with love and wedding plans as soon as he sees Taylor. She comes on strong, even going so far as to say that Brooke must move on her own. We can see why Ridge finds it difficult to break her heart again given her intensity. However, how will Brooke react to the fact that he did not urge her to leave Eric Forrester's mansion right away? We're making poor guesses. Brooke is disappointed with Ridge. Ridge is undoubtedly aware that he must be forgiving of Taylor. He is feeling both self-preservation and compassion at the same time. As a result, even though Ridge and Brooke are back together, they will continue to ignore Taylor for some time. Will being kept in the background make Brooke happy? Brooke Logan's unconscious form, the frantic press of Ridge Forrester's lips in a desperate, life-giving kiss that seamlessly, almost inevitably, morphed into the familiar heat of passion on that sun-drenched Naples shore. This moment, born of near tragedy, should have been a clarion call, a seismic shift forcing decades of waffling into decisive clarity. Ridge, physically shaken by the specter of losing Brooke, emotionally laid bare by the raw immediacy of her brush with death, seemed, in that adrenaline-soaked instant, to finally grasp the gravity of his perpetual indecision. The reunion felt fated, a return to a destiny endlessly deferred. Yet, the corrosive reality of Ridge Forrester, the master architect of his own romantic purgatory, reasserts itself not with a courageous declaration, but with a calculated, cowardly silence. His deliberate choice not to tell Taylor Hayes about the Brooke reunion is not merely a postponement, it's the poison seeping into the foundation of his already fractured relationships, exposing the profound selfishness and emotional immaturity that sustains the bridge/Tridge dumpster fire and leaves viewers questioning if anyone within this tangled web deserves genuine rooting interest beyond schadenfreude. This silence isn't born of noble protection, it's the latest, most damning evidence of Ridge's core inability to confront the consequences of his own chaotic heart, a betrayal enacted not through action, but through a profound, self-serving omission that weaponizes vulnerability and perpetuates a cycle where everyone loses, especially the women he claims to love. The Naples incident provided the perfect alibi for authentic feeling, the primal fear of loss stripping away the usual layers of Forrester ego and convoluted justification. Saving Brooke wasn't a choice between rivals, it was a human reaction. The subsequent kiss, while morally dubious given his engagement to Taylor, possessed a terrifying, almost elemental logic in the aftermath of crisis. It screamed finality. It whispered, "This is it. No more running." But how could Ridge, the man who has built an empire yet remains emotionally homeless, possibly sustain that clarity? The answer lies not in the Mediterranean sun, but in the shadowed corners of his own character. Returning to Los Angeles isn't just a geographic shift, it's a retreat into the carefully constructed labyrinth of his own making, where Taylor Hayes, the other pillar of his lifelong romantic ping-pong match, resides. And Taylor isn't just waiting, she's buoyant with the near-delusional hope that this time, after Brooke's perceived abandonment, falling off Nick's boat reads, to Taylor, as Brooke moving on, Ridge is finally, irrevocably hers. Her broken heart syndrome isn't merely a plot device, it's a loaded gun Ridge himself helped load through years of manipulation and false promises. Her fervent embrace, her laser focus on wedding plans, her dismissive assertions that Brooke is moving on, these aren't just expressions of love, they are a fortress of expectation built on the shifting sands of Ridge's past assurances. Facing that fervor, looking into the eyes of a woman whose physical health he knows is precariously tied to emotional stability, a stability he shattered before and is now responsible for maintaining, requires a courage Ridge has demonstrably lacked for 30-odd years. Confessing the Naples truth would be an emotional detonation he is pathologically unwilling to trigger. His silence, therefore, isn't compassion, it's profound cowardice disguised as concern. He fears the immediate fallout, Taylor's potential collapse, her rage, the dissolution of the fragile normalcy he's crafted with her, far more than he values the integrity demanded by his renewed connection with Brooke or the basic human decency Taylor deserves. This is where Ridge's self-preservation instinct, honed to razor sharpness over decades of playing both ends against the middle, kicks into overdrive. He understands the volatility. He knows Taylor's love, while deep, carries an intensity that can curdle into devastation. He also knows Brooke, fresh from the euphoric near-death reunion, expects action, expects him to finally choose her openly and definitively. Telling Taylor immediately forces a binary choice he is constitutionally incapable of making cleanly. It means potentially destroying Taylor and facing Brooke's wrath if he wavers, which history guarantees he will. Silence, however, offers a temporary, murky reprieve. It allows him to avoid the detonation now. It lets him keep Taylor placated, her wedding dreams intact, her health ostensibly stable, while he presumably explores the reignited spark with Brooke in secret. It's the ultimate act of having his cake and eating it too, albeit a cake baked with deceit and destined to spoil. He can bask in the validation of Brooke's resurgent love, stolen moments charged with the illicit thrill of the forbidden, while maintaining the comforting structure and adoration of his life with Taylor. He convinces himself this easing her down gently approaches kinder, more responsible, when in reality, it's the cruelest cut of all. Every day he doesn't tell Taylor is a day he reinforces her hope on a lie. Every stolen moment with Brooke is an investment in a future built on quicksand. He preserves his immediate comfort zone by mortgaging the emotional well-being of both women, proving that his primary loyalty is, and always has been, to Ridge Forrester's avoidance of discomfort. And what of Brooke, relegated once more to the shadows? The woman pulled back from the brink of death by the man she considers her destiny, only to be asked to participate in a charade? Her initial euphoria, born of trauma and passion, will inevitably curdle into resentment and a profound sense of déjà vu. Ridge's silence to Taylor isn't just a betrayal of Taylor, it's a betrayal of their Naples moment, of the vulnerability they shared. It tells Brooke that even facing death wasn't enough to make Ridge prioritize honesty and commitment to her. Being kept a secret, forced to wait while Taylor plans a wedding based on a false reality, is a humiliation Brooke has endured before, but one that cuts deeper with each repetition. It forces her to confront the bitter truth: Ridge's passion for her, however intense in stolen moments, is never quite potent enough to overcome his fear of confrontation or his pathological need to manage the fallout his actions create. Her compliance in this secrecy, however reluctant, implicates her too, dragging her back into the toxic dynamic she and Taylor once transcended in their brief, glorious friendship, a friendship sacrificed anew on the altar of Ridge's indecision. Can she truly be happy hidden? Absolutely not. Her participation becomes less about hope and more about a desperate, perhaps masochistic, belief that this time, the secrecy will finally end with Ridge choosing her unequivocally. But Ridge's history suggests the secrecy is the pattern, not the path out of it. Ultimately, Ridge's failure to tell Taylor about Brooke is the rotten core of this never-ending saga laid bare. It transcends mere plot contrivance, it's the definitive character reveal. It screams that Ridge Forrester, for all his power, charm, and professed love, remains emotionally stunted. He is a man fundamentally unwilling to pay the emotional cost of his desires. He lacks the courage for honest rupture and the integrity for faithful commitment. His solution, secrecy, delay, managing perceptions, is the engine that perpetuates the misery. He doesn't just disappoint Brooke, he actively disrespects both women by denying them the agency that comes with truth. Taylor is infantilized, her health used as an excuse to deny her the right to make informed choices about her life and heart. Brooke is diminished, her profound experience reduced to a dirty secret. The middle-aged dumpster fire burned so brightly not because of the inherent conflict between Brooke and Taylor, but because Ridge continually douses it with the gasoline of his deceit and avoidance. Until he finds the courage to speak the truth, regardless of consequence, to stand in the wreckage he creates and own it, there is no one truly worthy of rooting for, only victims circling the drain of his indecision, waiting for the next inevitable, messy explosion his silence has only delayed, not prevented. The Naples reunion offered redemption, his silence in LA guarantees only more ruin. Nick Marone stood amidst the fading Italian sunlight, the phantom weight of an ungiven ring heavy in his pocket, his confidence, that robust, almost tangible force that propelled him across oceans to reclaim a love he believed merely dormant, now crumbling like sun-baked earth beneath a sudden deluge, the deluge being Brooke Logan's gentle, yet utterly final, refusal. He had been so supremely, catastrophically overconfident, mistaking Brooke's residual warmth, the undeniable shared history etched in the existence of their grown son, Jack Marone, a spectral presence in their lives, last seen as a child over a decade ago, his current absence alongside Nick's return whispering volumes about the impermanence of this storyline, for fertile ground where a renewed, enduring love could blossom. He willed himself to believe, much like Taylor Hayes clinging to the fragile hope that years of shared trauma and rekindled affection could finally cement her place beside Ridge Forrester, that the intricate, often painful tapestry of Brooke's romantic past could be unraveled and rewoven to center him. Yet, the brutal, beautiful poetry of destiny, or perhaps simply the unbreakable gravitational pull of a decades-long epic, intervened not with words, but with a primal, life-affirming act. Ridge Forrester, without a heartbeat of hesitation, plunging into the churning Mediterranean to save his Logan after witnessing her fall from Nick's boat, a boat rendered helpless by Jack's symbolic inability to steer, a poignant metaphor for Nick's own lost control over the situation and Brooke's ultimate trajectory. That single, desperate, heroic lunge into the waves wasn't just rescue, it was a deafening, nonverbal declaration, resonating deeper than any vow spoken over an altar, violently reinforcing the enduring, seemingly unbreakable bond forged in countless crises, triumphs, betrayals, and reunions across nearly 4 decades. Ridge's instinct wasn't calculation, it was pure, unadulterated possession born of a connection that transcends logic or convenience, a stark, wet counterpoint to Nick's carefully orchestrated proposal on a picturesque plaza, a proposal interrupted, significantly, by Nick himself offering Brooke a mere diversion from Ridge-induced heartache, a concept rendered laughably inadequate when measured against Ridge literally diving into her potential oblivion. The fundamental miscalculation anchoring Nick's overconfidence lay in a gross misreading of historical weight and emotional resonance. Yes, Brooke once cared for Nick deeply enough to marry him and bear his child. Their shared chapter produced Jack, a living testament to their connection. But that chapter, spanning a single marriage from 2006 to 2007, stands as a brief, albeit intense, interlude against the sprawling, chaotic, yet fundamentally defining saga of Bridge. 8 marriages. 8. Each dissolution a scar, each reunion a testament to a force neither seems capable of permanently escaping. Their history isn't just shared, it's co-authored in the very DNA of their lives, their family, and Forrester Creations itself. It's embodied in R.J. Forrester, Brooke and Ridge's grown son born years before Jack, a constant presence actively woven into the current fabric of their world, unlike the occasionally mentioned, physically absent Jack. Nick's pull, while potent in its moment a decade and a half ago, simply lacks the deep-rooted, tangled strength of the roots connecting Brooke to Ridge, roots that have weathered hurricanes of infidelity, desertions, rivalries, and external manipulations, yet repeatedly send forth new, stubborn shoots. The very nature of Jack Marone's absence during Nick's current return, a pointed narrative choice, perhaps hinting at actor Jack Wagner's likely short-term stint, subtly underscores the impermanence of Nick's claim. Jack is the past, RJ represents the enduring, living legacy of Bridge. Nick believed Brooke would be open to being wooed, mistaking her vulnerability post-Ridge's engagement to Taylor for a vacancy he could fill. He, like Taylor gazing at Ridge with hopeful, destiny-blinded eyes, convinced himself that the sheer force of his desire and their past could overpower the monumental history, the profound, complex, and often destructive love story Brooke shares with Ridge. He ignored the language Brooke and Ridge have spoken fluently for years, a language of crisis, rescue, and inevitable collision. Taylor Foster, standing frozen at the end of the impossibly long, petal-strewn aisle in a gown of blinding ivory silk and intricate chantilly lace that felt suddenly, terrifyingly heavy against her skin, like a shroud rather than a celebration, recognized with a cold, creeping dread that started in her fingertips and spread icy tendrils towards her heart as her gaze locked onto Ridge Forrester's face, a face she knew as intimately as her own, yet in that suspended moment before the organ's first triumphant chord, became a terrifying mask of something alien and devastating, not the familiar warmth, the nervous excitement, the tender resolve she'd seen reflected back at her just hours earlier during their private, whispered promises and shared laughter over coffee, but a stark, raw anguish, a profound conflict warring behind eyes that refused to meet hers fully, darting instead towards the arched exit as if calculating an escape route, his usually confident posture rigid, almost brittle, his jaw clenched so tightly a muscle pulsed visibly beneath the smooth line of his impeccably tailored tuxedo, the very air around him seeming to crackle with an invisible, negative energy that cut through the romantic ambience like shards of ice. Every meticulously planned detail, the cascading floral arrangements dripping from every column, the string quartet poised with bows hovering above strings, the expectant smiles of her mother Brooke Logan, radiant yet subtly anxious beside her, the proud, slightly smug beam of his father Eric Forrester in the front row, suddenly felt grotesque, a stage set for a tragedy about to unfold, the sheer perfection amplifying the impending horror as Taylor's carefully constructed world of hope and forever began to fissure internally, her breath catching in a throat suddenly parched, her hand trembling where it rested lightly on her father's arm, the delicate bouquet of gardenias and stephanotis she held feeling like lead weight, the rustle of silk and satin from the guests now sounding like a sinister susurrus amplifying the frantic pounding of her own pulse in her ears. The officiant, sensing the palpable shift, cleared his throat nervously, the small sound echoing like a gunshot in the sudden, unnatural quiet that had descended as Ridge finally, slowly, turned his head fully towards her, his eyes meeting hers not with love, but with a depth of sorrow and finality that stole the breath from her lungs, a silent communication that screamed volumes louder than any vow he might utter, a look that conveyed not just doubt, but a shattering, irrevocable no. Time seemed to distort, stretching the seconds into agonizing eternities. She saw the subtle tremor in his hand as he reached not for the ring in his pocket, but to loosen his collar as if suffocating, the sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool, air-conditioned room, the way his gaze flickered past her, beyond the gathered witnesses, towards some unseen point of desperation, and in that infinitesimal moment, Taylor knew, with a terrifying, soul-crushing certainty that felt like falling endlessly into a black void, that the man she loved, the man she had fought for, forgiven, built a fragile future with amidst storms of betrayal and outside forces, was not about to marry her. The carefully constructed dam holding back the tidal wave of his internal conflict shattered not with a roar, but with a choked, guttural sound that escaped his lips, a sound more animal than human, raw with pain and panic. Taylor. He rasped, his voice cracking, barely audible yet carrying to the farthest corners of the stunned silence, I can't. The words hung in the perfumed air, stark and brutal, a guillotine falling on their shared dream. I'm so sorry. I can't do this. The finality in those 3 words, can't do this, echoed with the force of a physical blow, landing squarely in the pit of Taylor's stomach, a sickening, vertiginous lurch that threatened to buckle her knees as the color drained completely from her face, leaving her as pale as the marble altar beside them, her eyes wide pools of utter disbelief and burgeoning horror, the carefully applied makeup suddenly highlighting the stark terror beneath. Before anyone could react, before a single gasp could fully form in the collective throat of the audience, before Brooke could clutch her daughter tighter or Eric could rise in bewildered protest, Ridge moved with a sudden, desperate violence, shoving his way past the stunned officiant, his movements jerky, fueled by pure panic and shame, knocking over a delicate floral stand that crashed to the floor in a shower of petals and broken crystal, the sharp sound a punctuation mark to his flight. He didn't walk, he ran, a desperate, headlong sprint down the very aisle he was meant to walk up moments later to claim her, his polished shoes slipping slightly on the scattered rose petals, his broad shoulders hunched as if warding off invisible blows, fleeing the devastation he had wrought with the single-minded terror of a hunted animal, leaving behind not just a bewildered congregation, but the tangible wreckage of vows unmade. The silence that followed was absolute, profound, a vacuum sucking the oxygen from the room, thick with shock, embarrassment, and the dawning realization of the colossal, public humiliation unfolding before them. Then, as if released from a collective spell, a wave of gasps, murmurs, and choked exclamations rippled through the crowd, a horrified symphony of disbelief, cameras clicking frantically like obscene insects capturing the carnage, phones raised not in celebration but in morbid documentation of the unfolding disaster, the whispers escalating into a low roar of scandalized commentary. Taylor remained rooted to the spot, a statue carved from ice and despair, her vision tunneling until all she could see was the empty space where Ridge had stood, the imprint of his anguished face burned onto her retinas, the echo of his "I can't" reverberating inside her skull like a death knell.